Amongst the Adamites, the earth was first populated by mating between close relations, because this was before the law. In the beginning, this was necessary, but after a certain point, Yahuwah further forbade it to continue. But after the great sandstorm, that killed most of human life, then there were also the many ice ages, and lastly the meteorite shower 17,250,000 years ago. It made the earth void and darkness covered the earth. It destroyed the people that had evolved out of the water and other creatures, dinosaurs and other animals that existed at that time. And what is the beginning? The first time, or the first time of a second incident. Oftentimes people confuse making, which is bara, with creating, which is kalaka. The word kalaka is to create, to bring about a thing that is new, as for the very first time. Kalaka took place 76 trillion years ago. That's our etheric creation. The kalaka of the sun called the Big Bang occurred 93 billion years ago, and the kalaka of human beings, which is called evolution, took place after 24 billion years ago, which was the creation of the planet Earth. Bara is the recreation, or in the case of human beings, procreation. It took place after the 17,250,000 years ago meteorite storms, which hit the planet Earth and killed all the dinosaurs and most of the prehistoric humans of different tribes that walked the earth. It was 2,250,000 years ago that who the creative force of ancient Egypt later called Yahu blew of his ruach. This wind cleared away the dust cloud that blocked the Ra, the light of the sun, which made the earth's atmosphere void and darkness and unable to hold life. Then 49,000 years ago the Elohim beings that survived were ordered to procreate a human in their image and after their likeness, and called their name Adam, and that the planet be refilled, or replenished, and when the sun shined through the dust cloud, there was again evening and morning. During earth endangering calamities, these tribes of Pygmy, Taites, Adamites, Watusi, and Hindus went into caves behind waterfalls where there were air pockets, and there they lived. This is where you get the name caveman. The elders amongst them, called Kahan, were under beings called Zodok. Later mythology called them angels, and turned them from spiritual beings to spirit beings, or spooks. The Pygmy and the Watusi tribes still exist today. The nationality of the so-called American Negro is the Nubian, lost sheep of Nubia, today called Egypt or Ethiopia. El-Yahuwah refers to our people as being the lost sheep because El-Yahuwah saith, our heritage has been scattered among the nations, and our language is lost to us. We have become Goyi, Gentile, eating pork, getting drunk, not following the 613 commandments. In fact, we are lost from everything that belonged to us, including our Heavenly Father, our way of life, our identity, and our true family, Amun-Ra, Resheph, Sakmet, Adam, Shu, Sobek, Kenamu, Thoth, Min, Alser, Mot, Selkus, Anubis, Ra, Isis, Hathor, Nephthi, Iamhetep, Tefnut, Set, Horus, Ptah, Mut, Khonsu, and Geb. Therefore we can no longer say that we are the pure seed, but rather, the lost seed or sheep. Other Nubian tribes after Noach and Abraham either migrated, or integrated, with other tribes. Some by force, some through fear, some through choice. Some of the tribes of Israel, and some of the tribes of Ishmaelites, and Midianites held firm in their land, in Nubia and Ethiopia, after our migration from Old Israel in the 6th century and under Solomon, and later from Arabia to Sudan as Fatimas and Ali's family of Muhammad, and Dongola as Islamic Hebrews or Ansarullah of the Mahdi. And although it was the prophecy that our people be defiled, and taken into a second bondage in the 1600s, it was through trickery that it was done. The tribes of Nubia were called the Hadendawa, or Fuzzy-Wuzzy, known for the Afro hairstyle which came to America with them. They were the strongest among the tribes of Nubia and the greatest. But they were destined to be in a second slavery, destined to become a great nation, destined to maintain the Nubian identity. A nation that cannot and will not be wiped out by any mortals, not by killing, nor by integration. Our people are a lost people, and an ignorant people, but they are a strong people. They will begin to realize their strength, if they would learn right knowledge, the real truth, and stick together. But the brainwashing of slavery is still overpowering us. The spell of Leviathan cast on us 4,004 years before 2,000 years ago will be broken. There were many slave people from many different nations, but the so-called American Negroes are the only slave people who were taken into bondage as a nation, proceeded to become a part of one people, the only people of this land and their deities, the only people who are not respected as a people, the only people who do not know anything of themselves or their true people before them, or their true past, laws of life, worship, land, tongue, or identity. The Hebrews that were tricked into bondage from Nubia, and brought to this land, were not just one or two from different nations. We are a tribe of people, belonging to one people, and one clan, seed of Abraham. Even though our people have been brought down to be the filth of the world, stripped of all we possess, we are still hated by the pale man albino and other nations, though the enemy does a good job of pretending to be our friends. But don't be deceived, our people are not hated because they are black, or because they are termed Negroes, or because they are slavery people, or because they are ignorant. They are hated because of envy. Envy of what and who we really are, even though our people do not know what that is. However, the Canaanites, and other nations know, and they would love to see the complete elimination of all so-called Negroes, one way or the other. Many people say that there are some good pale albino people, but let me tell you, none of them are good, especially among the Amorites. Why do they proceed to conceal the truths? They still teach in their schools the same lies about us and themselves. Still kill us for nothing, drug us then blame us, and enforce the deeds of their people before them. No, they are just as bad as their people before them. In all people you sometimes find a few who do not adhere to the ways and doings of their people, but the majority rules. So, you go on, believing the enemy to mean you good, until it's too late, you better realize. As the Lamb saith, you act like a slave-born people. You act like you are not capable of knowing agreeable things, good, from disagreeable things, evil, right from wrong. You are a proud set of hypocrites, backbiters, evildoers, and haters of the truth. Many people refer to their being white Africans, and you act like you know nothing other than white to refer to the Amorites, or any other pale albino people. You don't know what white is, or know it when you see it. If you saw a white person coming down the streets, you would kill yourself from fright. They are not white, they are sick, pale sick. Africa's name was originally Ganawa, garden, and regardless of how long a Canaanite or any other people may live in there, or integrate among the Nubians, bearing children, they are not, but their children are original Nubian, and being Nubian from integration is the same thing. For an example, if a European woman bears children for a Nubian, their children, whether they come dark or light-skinned, are European, but if not, ask for a passport. The pale albinos call them mulatto, which is still Nubian just with light skin and 8 or 7 ether hair, curly or wavy hair, not original tied woolly hair, 9 ether being. We are the only one God. Many people also say that the sun burns people black. I know that a great deal of this doctrine came from religion, and pale scientists, but I can't for the life of me, see how any people, brainwashed or not, can be so blind and ignorant. Yet, if they can believe that they fell off the moon, down to earth, like foolishness tells, they can believe anything. Half of the doctrine that religious teachers teach to their followers they don't believe themselves, but they have to find something to appease the weak minds of all who will follow it, and they know that they will believe anything the pale man, Arab, or Jew says. For they know just how weak and ignorant our minds have become. Never in the history of this world has the sun burned a person to become black, and they live to tell it. The sun will give anyone a tan, and if you are already dark, it will tan you also darker. But the sun burns no one Nubian, giving them a color. As is, the pale people can't take the sun, it kills them if they are not able to retreat to some shade, like a cave, but the Nubian man can take the hot sun burning upon him 24 hours a day. Although, our people are so far integrated with the pale people in our minds, that many of us don't think we can take the sun as well. It is the nature of the Canaanites to take a lot of cold. Being out of our native climate, and in another, for so long, our bodies and systems have become accustomed to the change, enough for us to survive. During the earlier days of slavery, the slave traders were able to acquire slaves through numerous means. One way was by trading with the tribal chiefs. The pale man became friendly with the tribal chiefs and eased his way into their homes. The pale Europeans fooled the chiefs and convinced them to go against their brothers and take them into slavery. Yes, your own red Arab brothers sold you into slavery. The chiefs would then make the people believe that they were going to another part of the country to work for more gold, when, in actually, they had been sold. Most slaves were put into slavery by force, raids of stronger tribes upon weaker ones. They mostly came from the neighboring areas of the black Arab tribes of North Arabia, such as the Ishmaelite tribes of Kedar and Hadad, or from Abyssinia from remnants of Israelite tribes such as Judah and Dan, called Danakil, Philatians. The tribe of Israel, one of our own family, were formed of Yahuwah of Jacob's, Jacob's, 12 sons. Jacob's, Jacob's, name changed to Yisrael, Israel, making him father of all Yisrael, Israel, but Abraham is the real father. The 12 tribes of Israel are, 1. Reuben equals behold a son, 2. Shimon equals hearing, 3. Lewi equals joining, 4. Yehuda equals he will guide us to a reward, a guide, 5. Dan equals a judge, debt, 6. Naphtali equals my wrestling, 7. Gad equals fortune, 8. Asher equals happiness, 9. Yissachar equals praise El Yahuwah, 10. Zebulun equals dwelling, 11, Joseph equals El-Yahuwah shall increase, and 12, Benjamin equals son of the right hand. Each of Jacob's 12 sons was the leader of a great Nubian tribe of Israel, and the beginning of the Israelite nation. They were and are called the 12 tribes of Israel, Jacob. There is no land originally called Israel. The Jebusite of Canaan, called Jews, gave it that name to further deceive people, and it went down in history as being original. Just as other lies went down in history as being facts. Long before El-Yahuwah settled the 12 tribes in their land, our people continued to stray from El-Yahuwah and his 613 laws, to practice foolishness, and stay in the sin and corruption of the Canaanites and other nations who did not serve El-Yahuwah at all. All through the history of the world, Elohim fought for and protected their children from all enemies, and continued to forgive them for their sins against his 613 laws. If they once again strayed from El's 613 laws, into sin and corruption, they the Elohim sons and daughters of El would turn their face from us, and lift El's protection from us, leaving us on our own against the enemy who sought to overpower us. The Elohim, elders, knew what would happen, for as El-Yahuwah warned Adoni Abraham, saying, "Know that all your seed will become sojourner in a land of the Arets, planet Earth, western world, that is not for them, and they will oppress them 400 years, 1600 AD slave trade of Nubians to the western world until 400 years, that is up to the year 2000 AD. They shall serve the people of these lands, and their deities, they shall be sorely afflicted, and sold on slave blocks like sheep, for the iniquity of the Canaanites is not yet full. They will come again in the fourth generation, 1970 to the year 2000, 2030, 30 or 60 years, whatever is needed, and again they take your seed into bondage, but I will again deliver them with a strong hand, and return them to whence they came, and I will seek vengeance upon all who took part in the destruction and corruption of thy people, and the stealing of their identity and heritage." The other bondages of our people was to other kings and pharaohs. This one took place in 1600 AD, and as El-Yahuwah warned Adonai Abraham, it has all come to pass, except for the deliverance of our people, and their knowing the truth, and this is in process right now. El-Yahuwah's vengeance is yet to strike in full, bringing swift destruction to our enemies, and also of our people, who remain proud and stubborn, sticking with the enemy, in ignorance. AIDS is plague 1, the sun is getting closer and greater, and it's causing skin cancer, and death is plague 2. When have you ever known of Amorites bowing down, and serving other people and their deities? When have you ever known of Amorites being sold on slave blocks like sheep? When have you ever known of Amorites being lost and scattered in strange lands that was not theirs? When have you ever known of Amorites being robbed of their identity and heritage, and brought down to be the filth of the earth, not respected as a people, not knowing anything of themselves and their people, but filthy lies? When have you ever known of Amorites being taught by lying-tongued people of all colors? Yet, these are some of El-Yahuwah's descriptions of his people, the lost sheep. The Canaanites have been in strange lands all right, but it most certainly was not because they were lost. They well knew what they were doing, and where they were. They were there to lie, cheat, steal, spread the false doctrine of so-called Christianity, Mohammedism, and many other spook religions, gain power and wealth, rape, murder, pollute, and whatever else. And they have also been afflicted, but this affliction was just a small portion of their due repayment of El-Yahuwah's sworn vengeance. If you are one who dared to curse, deny, or stand in disapproval of El, because of what has happened to the Canaanites, and El made no move to prevent it, you really have a lot to learn. If you want to mourn a people's affliction, mourn your own, for what has happened to the Canaanites has yet to meet what our people has suffered at the hands of the Canaanites, and other enemies. Death is better than a torment worse than death, and complete death is better than a living death. As El-Yahuwah saith, when you see his vengeance strike the enemy, rejoice, not mourn. Just as you are doing now, our people trusted the Canaanites when they came to our land. We made them welcome, and went about to show them the customs and wealth of our land. The Canaanites, scheming on how to overpower our people, and confiscate our land and wealth, came upon a shrewd plan. They offered to bring as many of our people back to this land as would come, and show them around. This was a new, and exciting experience for our people, and they readily accepted. And as many as the ship would hold, they came. The ship was full to the brim, and all upon the masts. It was not until they were way out to sea, that our people realized they had been tricked, and was being brought to this land for slavery. But it was too late, and though many tried to kill themselves, rather than become slaves, they did not succeed. For the slave leaders of the 1600 Prince Henry, 1400 John Hawkins, had many ways of keeping them alive. Many tried to starve themselves, but food was forced into them by any means possible. The hull of the ship was crammed full, and the rest of the slaves were kept topside chained together, When a slave investigation ship came in sight, Prince Henry and John Hawkins, both knowing the penalty for slavery, especially if they was caught with Nubians, they became in deadly fear, and threw the Nubians overboard. Chained together, all the Nubians screamed out for mercy, but in vain. Those that were kept in the ship's bottom were never loosened to wash, or allowed to go to the bathroom. They had to remain in their own filth. The vengeful cry of our people still rings loud and clear, from both the land and the sea. After getting our people to this land, just as Yahuwah saith, they were sold on slave blocks, to the highest bidder, to the Americans and other so-called European pilgrims, who were migrating into this land, from their own. Our beautiful men and women were brutally forced into sex acts with the European and others, and any Nubian who defied them was brutally used as an example to any others who might get the same idea. Our people were completely at the mercy of the enemies, though they received no mercy. The Americans, and other enemies, were and still are brutal, unholy, vicious, inhuman, evil and wicked, and more severe their brutality upon our people, the greater their pleasure in doing it. Our people were sorely afflicted, and their wills were broken into submission and were deathly afraid of the pale race. As bred children were born from the forced sex acts, they were taken from their mothers, and sold, to be reared as slaves and servants. And they were taught a completely different way of life and worship, and to speak broken English called slang today. Many times, the older slaves were caught trying to tell the bred children the truth of what had happened to them and their people, but they were always found out, for the bred children, not knowing better, would run to their masters, and tell them what the older slave had told to them, and the slave was brutally used as an example to any other who might think to try the same thing. They formed a clan of Americans to enforce their rules and regulations. They became known as the KKK, the Ghost Riders, to instill fear into our people. Later they became the cops or police. Later they let the Nubians join to beat down their own people. Many shadow hours, nights, the enemies lay awake in terror of the singing, praying slaves in their native tongue, and would attempt to beat them into being quiet, but only death would quiet them. They knew they only feared Jesus, a Greek god Zeus, whose symbol of death was a cross. So the KKK burned crosses to put fear in our hearts, but we had our own cross called the Ankh, the key to the next life everlasting. The enemies set up laws to protect themselves from the future generations of the bred children, and to keep them in line. They hide behind the Holy Scriptures, the Holy Cross, and the unholy name of God, to do their evil, and make it appear to be legal, and in accordance with the laws of God. Schools, so-called churches, mosques today were set up to carry out, and enforce the laws and doctrine of the enemy. And none of the Nubian seed were permitted to teach or preach without a license or permission from the enemy. And then, they had to stick with the doctrine and laws of the enemy. God help them, if they were caught telling something else, other than what the enemy approved of and taught, for this they were killed. So, even if some of the seed of Nubia did not know the truth, or any parts of it, they dared not speak it. The seed of Nubia was given the title of Negro and many other derogatory terms. They were taught and forced to steal, rape, murder, lie, cheat, gamble, drink, hate and kill among their own, to be common in any and every manner, and all other kinds of filth. They were taught to straighten their hair, eat all kinds of filthy foods, especially pork. They were taught that Sunday and Friday was the Sabbath, and made to worship on that day. They were given idols and images of the pale people, to look upon, as being their God, or prophets. They were made to refer to the pale people, as being white, and godly, and made to believe that the pale people were their friends, and all other people were their enemies. They were made to say yes ma'am, no ma'am. Yes sir, no sir, and to use Mrs. and Mr. and titles to look up to, and respect the enemy as some great being. They were given, and taught to use last names. They were made to believe that black is filth, and that they were the lowest form of people on the face of the earth, meant only to be slaves to the enemy and pale people. They were taught that they were descendants of animals, and bore the leprosy curse. Our people were brought down to be the filth of the world. I could go on, but let's face it, there are not enough words or paper to fully express what has happened to our people, and yet, today, you can't tell them anything against the enemy. And many of them will die, before they accept anything negative about the enemy, let alone, turn from the enemy, and their corruptible, destructible society, and laws and doctrine, that the enemy has set up for our people's destruction. The enemy brainwashed our people to the extent that they made robots of them. Robots that only the enemy could mortally control. But the enemy forgot that even robots eventually get out of control, and when they do, they go berserk. They also forgot about Yahuwah's sword of vengeance for his people. The enemy thought that because Yahuwah had lifted his protection, and turned his face from us, his true chosen people, because of our continued sins, the enemy thought that they were let free to do what they wanted to do with us, and get away with it. the Canaanites, and other enemies, have fortified their souls to do their evil, and keep it in the truth hidden. And they will continue to do anything to keep it so. If they sought so desperately to kill our leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King, before he had completed his mission of bringing the truth to his people, of bringing them a new way of things that they might once again know and find the way out of slavery to the enemy, and exposing them. If they, the Canaanites, killed the lost sheep of the house of Israel, with the new Christian and Islamic ways, yet, never laying a hand on the other races, only killing and hurting the Nubian woolly-haired people, and if they have continued to kill others down through the ages, who carried and taught the truth, to our people, believe me, they will not hesitate to kill again, and proceed to make their killings appear legal.